I want to get rich. I want to make money fast. So fast that the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. Because if everything in life is getting more expensive, faster than I can earn, than trying to earn faster, isn't that just a natural survival response? Like running faster. When something is chasing you, except this time, what's chasing me is bills, rent, and that feeling at the end of the month when I open my bank account and my heart beats faster than when I run. So I did what a smart person in this era would do. I went online to look for ways to make money. And honestly, the internet never disappoints because all it takes is typing something simple like how to make money fast. And suddenly there's an entire world where everyone seems to be making money. Some people turn $1, 000 into $10, 000 in a few weeks. Others catch the right coin and change their lives. Some talk about the stock market like it's an ATM, as long as you know which buttons to press. I scrolled for a while and started to feel something very reasonable, almost too reasonable. Every person had their own logic, their own story, their own chart, and all of it pointed in one direction. Money could be made much faster than I had ever believed. And the only thing standing between me and that reality seemed to be that I wasn't fast enough, didn't understand enough, or wasn't bold enough. So I began saving a few coins with names that sounded slightly dangerous, but full of potential. I followed some stock tickers I didn't fully understand, but saw mentioned everywhere. I opened my app every day to check prices, like I was checking my own heartbeat. And every time the number moved up just a little, I felt a strange kind of joy, as if I had done something important. Even though I was just watching a number change color, slowly, that feeling grew. It shifted from, maybe this could work, to this definitely works. Then from, it works, to it only takes one good move. And at that point, putting money in no longer felt like a decision. It felt like the next natural step, like standing at the edge of a pool. Once you're there, you're going to jump. It's just a matter of when. After thinking like that for a while, I began to notice something interesting. No one was actually forcing me to make money fast. No one was pressuring me. There was no deadline for becoming rich, but everything around me made moving slowly feel irrational. I may not understand economics deeply, but I understand the end of month feeling very clearly. My income stays the same, but everything I pay for doesn't. It rises quietly, gradually, not enough to shock me immediately, but enough over time to make me realize I'm not moving forward. I'm just trying not to fall behind. I open the news and see interest rates, the Fed, inflation. I read it, not fully understanding everything, but there's one oddly comforting thought. It seems like even the people controlling these things are not entirely sure. They're figuring it out as they go. And if they aren't certain, then my confusion about my own finances suddenly feels reasonable. Meanwhile, the world outside continues as usual. Gas prices go up, normal. Food costs rise, normal. Living expenses increase, normal. And slowly, even the fact that my money isn't keeping up becomes normal. That's the most dangerous part. Getting used to it. I started to look at it more closely and realize something uncomfortable. If I don't change anything, if I just keep working, saving, waiting, then in 5 or 10 years, I won't be standing still. I'll be moving backward, not because I'm doing something wrong, but because the world isn't slowing down to wait for me. At that point, everything in my head became very clear. If I don't speed up, I fall behind. And falling behind in a game that's accelerating is almost the same as losing. It sounds a bit negative, but it also sounds logical. It's not that I want to take risks. It's that not taking any risk starts to feel like the biggest risk of all. And the strange thing is, once I started thinking like that, I didn't feel reckless anymore. I felt reasonable. From there, everything in my mind began to feel clear in a way that was slightly dangerous. I wasn't rejecting slow wealth. I just felt like it no longer fit my situation. It sounded rational, mature even. But in reality, I was becoming impatient in a very logical way. I still worked, still saved, still tried to do everything a stable person should do, but the more I did, the more it felt like I was standing still, very diligently, every month. I tried a little, but nothing really changed, and that feeling was more frustrating. than not trying at all. Meanwhile, all it took was opening my phone to see a completely different world. A world where money didn't move step by step, but in waves. People didn't talk about 10 years from now. They talked about this week, this month, this move. And the more I listened, the more it made sense. Because if speed had changed, then the way to make money must change too. My thinking shifted quietly, almost without me noticing, from earning money to not missing money. It sounds similar, but it's completely different. One is about building, the other is about chasing, and I had started chasing without realizing I was running. At first, I just observed, then I followed. Then I tried a little, and what kept me there wasn't the money. It was the feeling of being right, even just a little small wins. That made me think, maybe I get it now, like I was no longer an outsider, like I could see something others couldn't. And the most dangerous part, I didn't need to be right often. Just a few small wins were enough to create a very convincing story in my head. I wasn't rich yet, but I was on the right path. And that feeling of being on the right path made everything easier to accept. Even when there were no real results yet, I started thinking, more simply, if just one right move could make up for everything, then slow, steady progress began to feel unnecessary, like choosing stairs when there's an elevator. And in my mind, choosing the elevator wasn't laziness, it was smart. From that point on, I stopped looking for ways to make money. I started looking for ways not to miss opportunities. And that thought felt incredibly logical, so logical that I didn't realize I was getting used to needing to be fast, to be right, to catch things in time. And the more I got used to that speed, the harder it became to return to a normal pace. At that moment, I still believed I was in control, still believed I understood the market better than before. But the one thing I truly understood was the feeling that I was about to make money. After repeating that cycle for a while, I began to notice something almost ironic. What made me open the app every day wasn't the money itself. It was the feeling right before the price moved up. I didn't even need profit. Just a small uptick was enough to make me feel right. That feeling was real, fast, strangely satisfying. Like I had just done something smart, even though I was only watching numbers change color. Later, from random reading, I learned something interesting. The brain doesn't reward you most. When you actually make money, it rewards you most. When you think you're about to make money, and behind that is dopamine, it doesn't make you richer. It makes you believe you're on the right track. And the market happens to work exactly the way the brain loves most. It goes up, it goes down, unpredictable, almost like a 5050 game. And the more uncertain something is, the stronger the dopamine response, which means the harder it is to predict, the easier it is to get hooked. That's when I understood why I could stare at charts all day without getting bored, why my heartbeat followed the price movements, why even when my account barely changed, I still felt deeply engaged. Because at that point, I wasn't investing anymore. I was playing a game where rewards were distributed randomly. It sounds like a casino, but with charts, it feels smarter than when the market started to reward me a few correct trades, a bit of profit. My brain did something very interesting. It didn't ask, was that luck? It immediately concluded, you understand now. From there, everything became smoother. I started seeing opportunities everywhere. Everything people said sounded reasonable. And most importantly, I began to believe I could read the market, even though I still couldn't explain why it moved up or down. This is what people call overconfidence. But at the time, it just felt like I was getting the rhythm. At the same time, money in my mind started to change, especially profits. When I made a little, I no longer saw it as real money. It felt like extra money, like a bonus. And because it wasn't my original money, putting it back into another trade felt completely normal. It sounded like capital management, but in reality, I was just spending more easily because it didn't feel like mine. Meanwhile, social media did the rest. Every day, someone was winning. Every day, there was a new success story. Even though I knew I was only seeing the highlights, my brain didn't process it that way. it only registered one thing. Other people are making money faster than you. And that's when FOMO began to take hold, not as excitement, but as anxiety, a quiet fear that if I didn't act, I would miss out. And missing out meant falling behind. And once that feeling became strong enough, everything else faded away. At that point, I was no longer making decisions based on logic. I was making decisions based on not wanting to be left out. And the most fascinating part, through all of this, I still believed I was being rational, thoughtful, strategic, when in reality, I was simply reacting exactly the way the human brain is designed to react. In other words, I wasn't controlling my emotions. I was just very good at explaining why they made sense. After a few wins, not big ones, just small profits, something subtle began to form in my mind, a quiet belief that I didn't even notice. At first, I was getting close to something bigger, not rich yet, but almost there. That almost there is dangerous. It has no clear number, no solid proof, but it feels incredibly certain, like just a few more right moves, and everything will change. And those few more times always feel close, easy, within reach. I started looking at my account in a very creative way. The current amount didn't matter as much. What mattered was the speed of growth. And if the speed was right, then results were just a matter of time. It sounded logical. It sounded like things I had heard online, so I believed it quickly. And then I began spending based on my future self, not the person I was now, but the person I believed I was about to become. I didn't have much yet, but I would soon. So spending a little ahead didn't feel like indulgence. It felt like moving forward early, like stepping into a life I believed was already on its way. I didn't think I was taking risks. I thought I was riding momentum. Once you're in the right rhythm, you have to go bigger, faster. You can't stay small forever. And that idea felt incredibly reasonable, so reasonable that I saw no reason to stop. I started making larger trades, faster decisions, and every time I had a reason. Clear, logical, convincing, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing, even though, if asked deeply, I couldn't explain why I was so certain. The strange thing was, I didn't feel like I was gambling. I felt like I was improving. Like before, I simply wasn't bold enough. And now that I understood, I had to go bigger to get different results. Meanwhile, nothing outside had really changed. Living costs were still high. Money was still losing value. The news was still uncertain. But all of that only made my thinking feel more valid. Because if things were this hard, then moving faster made even more sense. What I didn't realize was that the feeling of I'm about to get rich wasn't coming from reality. It was coming from a brain that had gotten used to fast rewards. And once it gets used to that, it always wants more, faster, bigger. So I didn't just invest more. I started living like a version of myself that I believed was about to exist. It sounded confident, visionary, but in reality, I was spending based on a future that I had never actually verified. At some point, I started to feel like I was no longer a beginner. I had seen the market go up and down. I had been right, been wrong. And most importantly, I began to believe I was no longer like the crowd. Other people bought out of FOMO. I analyzed trends. Other people reacted to news. I read market psychology. Other people made emotional trades. I had clear reasons. And the interesting part was all of that sounded completely reasonable. It sounded like someone who knew what they were doing. There was just one small detail. My actions looked almost exactly the same as theirs. But because I explained it better, I believed I was different. The market at that time was also very cooperative. It felt like anyone who entered made money. I did too. And this is the most dangerous phase, because when results are good, your brain assumes it's because you're skilled, not because conditions are easy. And that's when I started building a strong belief that I had caught the rhythm. People call this overconfidence, but to me, it just felt like progress. I began trading more with more confidence, more decisiveness. Every trade came with a story in my head. This one, because of capital flow. That one, because of news. Another, because of market feeling. And the funny thing is, even though the reasons kept changing, they always sounded logical. At the same time, I was being influenced by something I thought I was immune to: the crowd. But I didn't call it the crowd. I called it the trend. People were buying. I was buying too. But in my mind, I wasn't following. I was going in the right direction. The difference only existed in how I told the story. The behavior itself was the same. This is herd behavior. But calling it that sounds a bit foolish. So I called it catching the trend. Then when the market turned, things became more interesting. I didn't sell, not because I had data proving it would go back up, but because I had already put too much into it. Money, time, belief, and the story that I understand the market. At that point, cutting losses wasn't just a financial decision. It felt like slapping myself in the face, and I didn't like that. So I held, but I didn't call it holding. I called it conviction. The price dropped further. I bought more, but I didn't call it averaging down. I called it optimizing my position. Everything had a beautiful name: professional, logical, convincing. Only the result wasn't very beautiful. This is the sunk cost fallacy, but calling it that hurts. So I called it being patient until the market understands me. And the most ironic part is, throughout all of this, I still believed I was being rational, strategic, clear-headed, when in reality, I was doing exactly what the human brain is very good at doing: turning emotional decisions into stories that sound perfectly logical. And the more logical they sounded, the further I drifted from reality. At some point, after going through all of that, from excitement and confidence to that quiet sense that something felt off, but still holding on, I began to realize something I probably wouldn't have believed earlier. I didn't lose because the market was hard. I lost because I needed it to be easy. I entered the market not to understand it, but with a very clear expectation. It had to give me a faster way out than my current life. And once I carried that expectation in, everything I saw became distorted to support it. When the market went up, I called it opportunity. When it went down, I called it a correction. When I was right, I called it skill. When I was wrong, I called it temporary. I wasn't seeing the market as it was. I was seeing it as I needed it to be. And that's not because I wasn't smart. It's because the human brain is wired that way. It doesn't look for truth. It looks for consistency with what it already believes. This is called confirmation bias. But at the time, it simply felt like I'm making sense. Meanwhile, the world outside didn't adjust to me. Living costs in the U.S. were still high. Housing was still expensive. Healthcare was still expensive. Inflation might slow down, but prices don't go back. Salaries may rise, but not enough to create real security. And that pressure, that was what pushed me into the market in the first place. I wasn't investing just because of opportunity. I was investing because I needed an escape. And once you need an escape, you no longer see risk as risk. You see it as the price you have to pay for a chance to move faster. And that idea sounds very reasonable in a world where moving slowly feels like falling behind. But what I didn't realize was this: the market does not exist to solve my problems. It doesn't care what I need. It doesn't care about my pressure. It doesn't care how fast I want to escape. It only reflects supply, demand, psychology, and capital flow, and I brought into it my emotions, expectations, fears, and hopes. So when those two things met, a cold, emotionless system and a mind full of dopamine, FOMO, and financial pressure, the outcome was almost decided in advance. Not because I was stupid, but because I was playing a game whose rules were never designed for my emotions to win. That's when I began to understand something simple, something I had always tried to overcomplicate. My problem wasn't that I was making money too slowly. It was that I couldn't tolerate the feeling of making money slowly. I didn't lack opportunities. I didn't lack information. What I lacked was the ability to endure a process that didn't give immediate feedback. My brain had become used to fast dopamine, immediate signals, instant results, that feeling of being right away. And when I returned to slower, more stable paths, they felt dull, insufficient, even wrong, even though they were the ones that actually worked. And that's not a personal flaw. That's how the human brain works. It prefers fast rewards over bigger ones. It chooses short-term certainty over long-term benefit. And when you place it in a volatile environment where everything constantly flashes and moves, getting pulled in is almost unavoidable. But that doesn't mean you can't notice it. Because when I looked back, I saw something clearly. I didn't lose money just because I made wrong decisions. I lost money because I repeated the same pattern, just under different names. Sometimes I called it opportunity, sometimes conviction, sometimes strategy, but the core was the same. Meanwhile, the world outside remained unchanged. Living costs didn't drop just because I needed them to. The market didn't become easier just because I wanted it to. The Fed didn't set policies based on my account. Money didn't come faster just because I wanted it to. Everything kept operating the way it always had. I was the one trying to speed up a process that doesn't respond to emotion. And maybe the biggest shift wasn't that I found a better way to make money. It was that I realized if I don't change how I respond to money, then no matter how many opportunities I have, the result won't change much. Because in the end, the problem was never the market. It was that I always needed it to move faster just so I could feel okay. I didn't lose because of the market. I lost because I couldn't handle the feeling of not winning. Yet, after all of that, there wasn't a moment of sudden enlightenment, no single day where everything became clear. It was simply that, after repeating the same kind of mistake enough times, I got tired of the way I was thinking. Before, every time I opened the app, there was hope. Now, it felt familiar, like I was replaying a script I had already memorized, but still acting it out as if it were new. I still watched prices, still followed the market, but the feeling of this time might be different was gone. Instead, there was a quiet discomfort when I realized I was about to do the same thing I had always convinced myself was reasonable, and that discomfort made me pause. Not because I had become more disciplined, but because I no longer trusted my own sense of this makes sense as much as before. Looking back, I never lacked opportunities, not once, but every time an opportunity appeared, I turned it into something bigger than it was. It stopped being just a trade. It became a turning point in my life. And once I attached that kind of meaning to it, it became much harder to let go. I didn't stop investing. I just stopped believing that one right decision could fix everything. Because the truth is, there's no single right move big enough to undo a pattern of repeated mistakes. And that pattern didn't come from the market. It came from how I responded to it. The world outside is still the same. Living costs are still high. The economy is still uncertain. Markets still move unpredictably. And of course, they have no reason to become easier just because I've learned something. But this time, I stopped trying to make it easy. I just began to see clearly how I had been trying to force it to fit what I wanted. And maybe the biggest change isn't that I make more money now. It's that I trust my own certainty a little less. I trust less that this time I'll be right. Strangely, when I trust less, I also lose less money. It may sound negative, but it actually feels lighter because when I no longer need to protect a perfect story in my head, I no longer have to hold on to decisions I already know are wrong. And in the end, I realized something simple. I don't need more opportunities. What I need is to stop believing that I won't repeat the same mistake, just in a more convincing way.